This is kind of a tough one, but you know those things in life that you know are going to benefit you in the future but are really hard right now in the moment, like exercise, flossing, saving for retirement, all those sorts of things? Well, add one more to the list. I'm talking about fruit thinning, and specifically with peach trees. So today, this video is all about thinning fruit off of your peach trees, why to do it, how, when, even if you should. Let's get into all that. The first question is, do you even need to thin the peaches on your tree? No, you really don't have to do it. It's perfectly okay if you skip this. But kind of like I tell my kids, you can choose your actions, but you can't choose your consequences. So there might be consequences to not thinning your peaches. Let's talk about those for a second. For one thing, and this is probably the biggest one for me, is let's say I leave all of the peaches on my tree as they are and they grow and I have this epic, beautiful, perfect crop this season and I get tons of peaches. Well, there's a really good chance that next year I will get little to no fruit on the same tree. And that's called biennial bearing. So that happens when a tree carries a huge fruit load one year, but then uses up all of its stores of resources and needs time to recuperate. And so then it doesn't fruit much the next year. And I don't know about you, but I would rather have a good crop every year than to have an epic crop one year and then have a year or two with little to nothing. So that's one of the main reasons that I like to thin my peaches. Another one is because of fruit dropping. So the tree, if I was to leave it alone, chances are it would drop a lot of these peaches on its own a little bit later in the season. And that's fine, that's nature, right? Doing what it needs to do. But by thinning them out now while the peaches are a little bit smaller, I'm giving the best chance for the remaining fruits to grow bigger and more flavorful, because then there's better airflow, more light can get to the whole plant, and there's just more nutrients and resources available for each peach to grow bigger and better. So if you want the best possible crop, go ahead and manually thin now rather than waiting for the tree to do it on its own. And then the last thing is because of, this tree is about 4 or 5 years old, and some of these branches are still pretty thin and not real strong. So just as an example, I don't know if you can see, but this branch is about 12 inches long. And there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 peaches on this 12-inch branch. Now, chances are it would probably drop a few, but let's say it had, I left all of the peaches on this branch. There's a good chance that it would get too heavy and break before the fruit had a chance to ripen. So for the sake of the health of the tree, you want to thin the load, just lighten the load a bit so that the remaining peaches can grow the best they possibly can. Peach thinning is a really important practice of commercial peach orchards as well. I read somewhere that it is the single most expensive thing about growing peaches commercially. And that's because the best way to do it is manually, by hand, and that's just expensive. But there are other ways that they do it too. There's certain chemical sprays that they use. I know, that sounds great. Or sometimes they'll even just shoot a blooming peach tree with water and knock off a bunch of the blooms, which seems risky to me. Definitely not things that I want to try in my own garden. But we can take the principles of why a commercial peach orchard would thin their peaches, which is to get the best fruit possible that's the most sellable at the supermarket. So we can take those principles and apply them in our home garden, just in a more cost-effective and gentler way. This peach tree is absolutely loaded with peaches. I mean, just taking this one branch, I did a count, there are 21 little baby peaches on this one branch. So we're gonna help it out by doing some thinning. The first thing to do is to pay attention to the timing. So what we're looking for is the size of these little baby peaches to be roughly between the size of a dime and a quarter. So you wanna wait long enough that you can see which peaches are developing well, which are the biggest, strongest kind of hero peaches on the tree, and you want to prioritize keeping those and get rid of anything that looks weak or damaged in some way. So it's going to be about 45 to 50-ish days after bloom. That's kind of your benchmark for the timing of when to thin. So the first thing I want to do is look for the peaches that are damaged in some way. Maybe they've got insect damage, maybe, I don't know, maybe a bird pecked at them. Or in my case, I've noticed this year I have a lot of double peaches, where there are two peaches coming from one little bud spot, and they're almost like fused together. And it was really weird. I wanted to see, why was this happening? Well, it turns out this happens, double peaches form when you've had a particularly hot, dry summer the previous year, because the buds begin to form, the fruiting buds form during the summer the previous year. So we had a record hot, dry summer, and now I'm seeing the results of that with all of these double peaches. That's okay, I can get rid of them. I need to thin them anyway, so I'll be looking for those. And I'm also just looking for ones that are on the small side right now. It may mean that they were just pollinated a little bit later, but it could also mean that they just weren't pollinated as well and they're not developing as well. So those are my priorities. Get rid of the things that are a little bit more problematic, and then we can get into spacing. You want them more or less evenly spaced all along the branch. You want to be careful not to weigh down the tip too much so that the branch doesn't break. So you're aiming for roughly 4 to 6 inches between each peach. You can use any type of pruners, or I have these little herb trimmers that'll work really well, but really the easiest way to do this is just with your hand. Just gently grab the peach, give it a slight little twist, and then pull it off the tree. If you're choosing one of a big cluster in one spot, pick the one that has the most sun exposure. Maybe it's the one on top of the branch, because chances are that one's going to grow to be the sweetest. That pile of peaches on the ground is very painful, but necessary. And when I look at my tree, I can see that there are still plenty of peaches on it, and I can just rest assured knowing that I've done something that is going to directly influence the quality and size of the peaches I'm going to get later this summer. And I mean, is there anything better than eating a fresh picked peach off of your tree that you grew yourself? I don't think there is. And if I had to pick my favorite fruit, I think that would be it. So let me know in the comments, do you thin your peaches? Have you noticed a difference in the quality after you've done so? And as always, just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much for watching. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.